All right, what's going on, fellas? I just got halfway into making a video about like effective lower limb training, both for bodybuilding and strength athletics. Talking about like three different categories of exercise when it comes to elastic tendon quality / force absorption, power exercises, strength and hypertrophy exercises, and endurance exercises, all about the lower limb and the anatomy of the lower limb. And I got about halfway in and I was like, wait a minute. I was like mid-sentence and I was like, this is boring as shit. Nobody is gonna like this. What am I doing? So I stopped the camera. I was like, I should do something else. I should make a video that people are gonna enjoy. Now, I've got a line that my goal is to walk this line in like a cool guy manner, right? On one hand, I want to make videos that I myself think are interesting. Things that are like, I think this obsession with no, I want high level training concepts. Well, a lot of us need to be reminded of mid-level training concepts. Now, I get that once you've been doing this for a while, there's not a lot of appeal to watching like very, very low level training info. Not that there's anything wrong with making it. There's a lot more beginners out there than intermediates, but I get not really wanting to watch it. You're like, yeah, I get it. But I do find myself watching like intermediate to advanced aimed content often, because I think all of us need to be reminded of a lot of fundamentals a lot of the time, because a good percentage of the time the reason I'm not getting better or the reason you're not getting better is not because we don't have this high level concept that we need to find. It's that we're fucking up something that's more of an intermediate level concept, and habitually reminding myself of those things with people that talk about them in cool ways where, hey, there's some nuance and I notice he phrased it that way and that leads to this higher level training concept. So I want to make stuff I would think is interesting, and it doesn't need to be unbelievably complex for me to think it's interesting, but I also don't want to fall down that trap of playing the YouTube game a little bit too hardcore, right? Like, I don't want to see myself in a thumbnail like making this face. I don't want to make the same videos over and over with like mass appeal. I don't want to pander to larger audiences. I don't want to make videos that I think suck just because they get more views. So I need to kind of walk that line of like something that I think is like intellectually at least kind of engaging and like talking about training with you guys, my boys that also just are nerds that like training. Actually, we're not nerds, we're jocks. Sorry. My fellow intellectual jocks that enjoy training. I don't know. I want to make those videos, but I also think having some entertainment appeal is good. And who knows, maybe I'll make $1 off of YouTube sooner or later if I'm making things that are kind of entertaining as well as informative. So I actually had an idea. I was looking back and I saw that you guys really liked that video where I broke out the whiteboard. It was like my favorite bodybuilding and strength training exercises for each muscle group. Just like, hey, what are the things I find myself throwing out there at my clients or throwing out there for myself when I want to tackle a certain muscle, whether we're trying to train it for bodybuilding purposes, pure hypertrophy purposes, or we want more general strength qualities or specific strength qualities, right? What are some of those exercises that are like my first things to throw out there? What are my favorites? And that kind of led me to an idea. I could do something similar. I'm not breaking out the whiteboard because I'm in a little bit of a time crunch today. Got a lot of coaching to get done. Got to go pick up Max from the airport. Got to run to the grocery store. So it's a little quicker of a video. But we're going to go through a kind of similar thing where I'm going to give you some of my favorite exercises that I think are chronically underused. Now, in thinking about this, I did realize the hang up there is underused by who, right? If you're in certain circles on Instagram, some of these exercises, you're like, everybody does those. If you're at a certain kind of gym, right? Like my gym is kind of a physical therapy clinic that is aimed a little bit towards like using strength sports to get people rehabilitated, teaching people to squat. So there's gonna be exercise selection that's very, very popular at my gym that are not popular at other gyms. So to me, I'm like, everybody does sled drags. Everybody's dragging the sleds around. Everybody that's in that gym, that got introduced to the gym through physical therapy, at some point was probably doing a sled push or a pull. It's more something that the guys there really like using. So that's a little tricky. Like, what circle of the internet are we talking? Are we talking like YouTube, right? Because YouTube has a weird obsession with like Zerchers, but I think in the broader fitness world, you could absolutely say that's an underutilized lift. But just to kind of keep it candid, I'm just trying to rattle off stuff. And like, if you think it's not underutilized, that's fine. Sure, you can tell me in the comments. I sometimes read them. I've been trying not to, but every now and then I take a peek. I would say the first one that came to mind is the ab wheel. I just don't see people using the ab wheel very often, and it is probably my favorite exercise for the midsection. I would say on paper, you would like have a decent argument to make that like, hey, that's great for strength. It's kind of an isometric ab exercise, very difficult, that can scale easier. It can scale harder. That's awesome. And you're kind of resisting extension against a variable resistance curve. So it's very hard at the bottom, easy at the top, hard at the bottom, lets you practice bracing. Tons and tons of good reasons this is awesome for strength athletes, but there's not much effective range of motion. Usually if we're looking for a good hypertrophy exercise, we want to hypertrophy our rectus abdominis, we want something with a range of motion. Maybe using an ab mat and doing a crunch, hanging leg raises, things where we have a little bit larger active range of motion are usually things we're going to lean towards from a bodybuilding context. But anecdotally, I think that the ab wheel has built a reasonable amount of midsection development for me, like pure musculature. So I would say that's something that's underused. I think it's a very, very, very helpful tool, whether your goal is getting jacked, getting strong, or some combination of the two. Probably one of my favorite exercises for the midsection. So a second one, we're going to stay with the midsection because that's just kind of where my brain is. I'm fixated, like I can't get away from it in my head when I'm like brainstorming more ideas. I've come up with a bunch of like core exercises I think are underutilized. The second one, I never see people other than me doing this, and that's weighted side planks. I think a lot of people know side planks are awesome. We can challenge our obliques, we can challenge our QL. Having that good like lateral stability, that ability to resist lateral flexion tends to make people's low backs feel real healthy if they get stronger at it. And they're like, oh, side planks are awesome. Well, usually if an exercise is awesome, we should probably at least try scaling it to get harder and see if it continues to be even more awesome. Sometimes some exercises we kind of want to leave them alone. Like once we get that low hanging benefit, we can leave them in there so that way that quality doesn't detrain, but we're not trying to progress them. But at some point I was like, maybe I should try to progress these, right? You could do a suitcase carry, also an awesome exercise, but it's more commonly used, a more popular exercise. I very rarely see people do just hiked up right on the hip, a dumbbell, weighted side planks for time. And these have made my midsection way stronger. Under squats, under deadlifts, under yokes, I feel sturdy and my back feels awesome. I very much think these are a good exercise that I really don't see people using, that I might give a shout if you're someone who knows, yeah, my midsection's a little flimsy. Just doing like my heavy compounds does not seem to be adequately training it. I want to do a little bit of work on top of that. So I'm just thinking like kind of across the body. All right, we kind of cheated, just did 2 for the midsection, but we're done with that now. And I was like, okay, let's kind of work other large segments of the body. What is like an underutilized posterior chain exercise, right? And the bulk of my posterior chain training is going to come from knee flexion, whether that be glute ham raises, Nordics, or hamstring curls, none of which I think are really underutilized per se, and heavy hip hinging in like RDLs, maybe good mornings, and then also just getting some volume in on the back extension. It's like, okay, well, all of those seem to be pretty popular exercises that are done a good bit. I don't think any of those are like underutilized or whatever the hell I'm going to title this video, right? Title pending. What could I say for the posterior chain that I think is underutilized, right? And it's like, yeah, you could say maybe people should be doing even more back extensions, but it's not like it's not a popular exercise. I see people at the gym doing back extensions regularly. Now, you guys have heard me say, right, like the back extension is like the curl of the strength athlete. It's always a good idea to do some, right? Finished up legs, do some curls, right? Finished up shoulders, do some curls. Why not, right? I view them that way for strength athletes. It's always a good idea to get in a little bit of heavy hip hinging or light hip hinging, whether it's active recovery, work capacity centric, hypertrophy centric. Back extensions are awesome, and I probably wish more people did them, but I would feel kind of cheesy saying that they're underutilized, especially on YouTube here where they've gotten a lot of love. I know Alec Unkiri has been a big vocal advocate of them. I know Paris has been a big vocal advocate of them. So I don't think I'd be doing you guys much of a favor saying like, hey, this little known exercise called back extensions, do them. But I did think of one, although definitely Paris and Alec Unkiri do have mentioned it in the past, so they beat me to it. But I do think kettlebell swings are an underutilized exercise for kind of posterior chain development. Maybe not the best pure hypertrophy tool, but for strength athletes, I think they're awesome. They reinforce an explosive hip hinge. They develop the glutes well, in my opinion, even kind of in the absence of a proper negative. I think they're a very good exercise. You can handle high volumes of them. You can build work capacity. You can build conditioning. I think they're really good. I really think they're slept on as like a deadlift and squat auxiliary motion to throw at the end of your lower days. Underutilized exercise. In the spirit of canceling that one, we're going to skip the lower limbs, as much as that's been like kind of my obsession for the last little week is just kind of thinking about the finer mechanics of lower limb training. But I was thinking like squat pattern work or quads. what do I think is underutilized, right? And it's like, thanks to Sam Sulik, sissy squats and leg extensions are certainly not underused in the gym nowadays. Thanks to knees over toes guys, sled drags have gotten quite popular, both of which I think are awesome tools for developing the quads. Squatting is the most popular it's ever been. You can't get a squat rack anymore. Like when I first started training, you could walk in and the squat rack was always empty if there wasn't someone doing shoulder presses in it. So that's gained in popularity. There's a whole war going on about front squats right now that I have absolutely no interest in weighing in on. So I was like, what can we say? What can we say for the squats? Kind of that quad, like that quad work, that squat pattern work. And again, they're very popular. I think even more people should do them. But like my cop-out answer would be like a unilateral squat pattern movement, because again, I think they are really, really good developmental tools. But Bulgarian split squats have become very popular. Walking lunges have become very popular. It's kind of like the back extensions where it's like, I think even I should see people doing them even more, but it's not like I don't see a lot of people doing them. So I decided on 1 1/4 reps on squat pattern machines, right? Where you go down, you come halfway up, come back down, back up, all under a controlled cadence on things like hack squats, leg presses, Smith machine hack squats, pendulum squats, if you're lucky enough for your gym to have one of those. I think those are really good, especially if we're doing them with a controlled cadence. I really, really, really like using 1 1/2 reps to kind of develop that pattern in the body, that ability to drive out of the hole without kind of dumping into the back, staying in the legs. I think that's an underutilized exercise that a lot of people would benefit from, just trying to gradually beat the books on some 1 1/2 hacks if their regular hack squats start to get stale and plateau out. All right, I kind of got that lower body checked off. We got to do something for the upper body. I'm trying to decide, because it's like there's a bunch of like kind of niche exercises that I'm like, I could throw those in there. I would say their popularity has fallen by the wayside. But like a Smith machine JM press, I don't see people using very often, but I think it's a phenomenal tool for developing strength in the triceps. But I'm kind of thinking like probably need an upper body push and an upper body pull for this kind of list to be at least remotely well-rounded. It's like pull-ups are popular, pull-downs are popular. We kind of check those vertical pull boxes. Like, you know, barbell rowing, it's pretty popular. Dumbbell rowing, like again, dumbbell rowing might be an example of an exercise much the same as the unilateral squat pattern work in the back extensions, where I wish I saw people doing it more. I think that like it's a good way to work some horizontal pulling, which is always good. It makes you stronger at a hell of a lot of things, and also build that kind of rotation, anti-rotation core work into your program without having to do a separate exercise. And again, I think that once people get past the initial difficulty of them, they build a ton of work capacity, and their backs tend to feel a little bit more healthy because, again, they get stronger in that rotational plane. They feel a little bit more sturdy with weights. But I can't really say that's an underdone exercise, because I do see people doing them pretty frequently. Let me think. All right, we're just gonna rattle some off to end this. I'll probably just put like 6 in the title, but the 6th one is just me saying a bunch of shit. I feel like Y raises, really good exercise, pretty solid developer for the lateral delt, kind of all heads of the delt to some degree, while also developing your upper back, kind of your lower trap. All of these things that are great for a good overhead position, all of these things that are good for honestly just being strong in general, having good shoulder health, keeping those muscles that help move the scap, kind of rotate it up, keeping all those things strong, while also being a decent bodybuilding exercise. So like Y raises, I like Powell raises a lot. My clients seem to disagree with me about that. Maybe those are underutilized. We talked about folding presses back when Westside was like one of the biggest influences in like American strength training. There was this big obsession with every way we could think of training the triceps, because in a suited bench, the pecs are being supplemented by the suit, and where we have the least assistance is going to be kind of that locking out tricep portion. So a ton of mental resources were poured into like, how can we develop the triceps to the craziest degree possible? So they had a lot of really cool, good ideas, like all of these different like chained tricep extension, banded tricep extensions, dead stop to the floor. And I think the idea of a folding press was something that was very popular back around 2010. That's fallen by the wayside, but it is a very good skill. I like the Smith machine for jam presses because that way it takes a little bit of the skill out of it. And so we're always coming to the same point on our collarbone, on our neck, a little bit above, depending on what we're doing and depending on who we're copying, how we do them. We just want that consistent point. And that way we can push a little bit closer to failure without kind of having to play that game of, oh, did I start changing my motor pattern too much? Though having the skill of just grabbing a barbell and doing some JM presses is really good and it served me quite well. I think those are pretty underrated. For the biceps, I don't fucking know. I couldn't tell you. I've been liking doing like pull-ups and chin-ups with a pause at the top. I found that has like a kind of a fun training effect, but I don't really think that could make the list officially. I guess the last one I would put in there is any kind of sprinting, probably tempo sprints, not all-out sprints. But as I've been doing in my training where I carry the yoke down, sprint back, it's been really eye-opening how many people engage in exercise regularly but have really largely lost their ability to sprint safely because they never do it, right? You're going to build up the specific kind of tolerances to what you're doing in sprinting by graded exposure to it. But the number of strength athletes, if you tell them even with a warm up to do a sprint, they're going to have like a small hamstring tear. And I think the loss of that human function is a bit of a shame. You know, is it going to make your hamstrings bigger? No, it's probably not. Is it going to make your deadlift go up? No, it's probably not. But I think preserving the ability to do it and being at least decent at it, to me, it's kind of necessary. Like, I consider myself like a physically robust guy. The idea that I couldn't, sprint down to the end of the block without blowing out my hamstring, that does not make me feel like a physically robust guy. So that's something I do think is under-challenged. And I think for strength athletes, hill sprints are kind of the way to go. If you have access, right, there's going to be lesser impact. All around, I think it's going to be a little bit easier to acclimate to rapidly compared to like sprints on a flat or sprints on a decline. I think hill sprints are probably the move.